Have you stopped to think about what the likelihood of a recession means for you in terms of your investment portfolio and also your career? We're going to talk about that today.
Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast that explores how financial advisors' blind spots can harm your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto.
This past week on the Make Better Wealth Decisions podcast, we spoke with Dave Wall of Clearbridge Investments, and we talked about the work that Clearbridge does with regard to their ongoing anatomy of a recession research. In it, we discussed a lot of what the research says for the U.S. market in terms of what we expect of economic growth, what is the likelihood of a pullback, what does history show us, what does the evidence show. And that discussion was useful, and the consensus from the Clearbridge folks is that the situation is pretty good and the likelihood of a recession in the U.S. is fairly modest. So I want to talk about what that means from the Canadian perspective in particular, and also with regard to some current events that perhaps haven't been given the full extent of the consideration that they require based on the Clearbridge research. First things first, what does it mean for Canada? It's important to note that recessions can happen anywhere in the world, but oftentimes a recession might happen in the US, but not in Canada. And that's especially important as we record this, as we're just on the eve of what we believe to be some significant tariffs being levied by the Trump government with regard to Canada, not to mention the rest of the world. If there are, in fact, tariffs, and the exact scope and degree of these tariffs is to be determined, as is the timing technically, but there's very little doubt that they're coming. There's very little doubt also that because all nations that trade with the U.S. will likely be feeling the impact of tariffs more severely than the Americans will feel just because of the size of the American economy, we're in a situation here in Canada where, as a trading nation, tariffs will be a severe impediment to economic prosperity, to the point where many, many Canadians think that any kind of tariffs of any significance will almost immediately create a recession in Canada. Now, I haven't seen a lot of financial commentators talk about that. I've seen economists talk about it. I've seen people talk about it from the perspective of jobs and inflation, but not necessarily with regard to what it means for the stock market. And again, the stock market and the economy are different things. So maybe maybe there's a good reason for that. I'm not so sure. I think we're in for a recession in 2025 in Canada with about, I'm going to say, a 90% plus certainty. It's almost certain that we're going to have a recession if, in fact, we have tariffs. So then the question becomes, what will we do about it? How long will the recession last? And how will we stave off the most harmful effects? And I don't know if people are really thinking about what it means in terms of their savings rate, in terms of having some cash reserves so that they can get through tough times, or perhaps even just to pay for more as they have to pay for imported food or what have you. But there's no question that tough times are going to be around the corner if, in fact, we have tariffs. The thing that a lot of people have not thought about is the motives behind Donald Trump's tariff policies. Now, there's very little doubt that the man does things to be chaotic, and he does it as a form of negotiation. And what he says is not always to be taken literally, although it is to be taken seriously, because he frequently does things that are similar to what he's talking about, but maybe not exactly verbatim. So he wants the world to be fearful of what American tariffs might look like without saying expressly the exact shape, form, sector, what have you, that will have an impact on what people have to prepare for. He likes to keep people on their toes. He likes to keep people guessing, and then looks for opportunities to negotiate a better deal. Well, that's all fine and well, except that you need to remember also that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, and he has done things that have been felonious throughout his entire life. He's not only convicted of 34 different felonies, he's not only been impeached twice, he's not only stolen state secrets, he's not only tried to mount an insurrection that would overturn a free and fair election. He has done all those things while simultaneously insisting he's innocent and having support of a majority of, or at least a large plurality of American people that have condoned this highly, highly confiscatory behavior. Well, now that he's got the reins of power and he's at the beginning of a 4-year term, I think it's reasonable to expect that he will continue to act the way he has always acted, which is to say, find ways to line his own pockets and find ways to line the pockets of his billionaire friends. There is a school of thought that is prominent in certain circles in the US that Donald Trump is going to deliberately manufacture a recession. He wants a recession. He wants the economy to go into the toilet so that he can find ways, because whenever the economy goes in the toilet throughout history, billionaires make out like bandits. There's going to be a lot of dislocation. Ordinary people are thrown out of work. Ordinary people feel pain. But billionaires get a chance to buy things when they're on sale. They get to consolidate market share. They get to take advantage of government bailout programs so they can line their own pockets. There's now a view that Donald Trump will manufacture recession starting in 2025 for the express purpose of enriching himself and enriching his billionaire friends at the expense of ordinary Americans, and if it comes to pass, ordinary Canadians and ordinary people in Colombia and everywhere else, so that he can do what he wants so that he can be phenomenally wealthy. Now, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. No one knows for sure. The thing about making financial decisions and any kind of wealth decisions is that no one knows for sure what's going to happen, and you need to keep your options open. All I'm saying is one of the options that you need to keep open is that Donald Trump is going to deliberately bring the chaos in such a way that you can't really properly prepare other than to be liquid, nimble, and prepared to pivot if need be as things start to evolve. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm certainly saying, however, that it could happen, and you should be prepared in case it does.
John DeGooey is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. The views expressed in this program are not to be construed as specific advice. It is recommended that you consult a qualified advisor before taking action. His books, The Professional Financial Advisor 4, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, and Bull Shift are available through Amazon and in bookstores throughout Canada. You can reach John at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387 or at jdegooey@designedsecurities.ca.